Sterling Marlin, Fender Fix Fiasco, and Red Flag Rule, 2002. Few rules are as cut and dry as don't touch the car under the red flag, but in the heat of the 2002 Daytona 500, Sterling Marlin momentarily forgot. In a wild finish, Marlin led when a late wreck brought out a red flag, halting the field. Under NASCAR rules, teams and drivers must freeze, no repairs allowed, until the race resumes. But Marlin's front fender was bent into a tire from earlier contact with Jeff Gordon. Desperate to preserve his chance at a Daytona 500 win, Marlin climbed out of his stopped Dodge on the backstretch, ran around, and began yanking on the fender to clear his tire. The TV broadcast caught it, fans gasped, and NASCAR officials immediately reprimanded him. An official in the pace car shouted for Marlin to get back in, then sent him to the tail of the lead lap for the blatant rule violation. His chance at victory vanished. The incident was so brazen it's still widely remembered, and it prompted NASCAR to emphasize that no work on cars during red flag periods means no work. Marlin claimed he thought it was allowed, even citing a hazy memory of Earnhardt cleaning his windshield under red. But NASCAR was unamused. Since then, drivers have been extra cautious not to even peek at their cars under stoppage. Marlin's misstep likely cost him the Harley J. Earl Trophy, but it ensured everyone got a crystal-clear reminder of a long-standing rule. When the red flag flies, hands off the machine. Rule clarified and enforced. Absolutely no working on vehicles during red flag conditions. Violators penalized to rear. Kevin Harvick, Cross-Series Crackdown on Aggression, 2002. Kevin Harvick's volatile temper early in his career led to a precedent-setting punishment. In April 2002, Harvick was on NASCAR's radar, already on probation in the Busch Series, now Xfinity, for rough driving. Then during a Truck Series race at Martinsville, he spun Coy Gibbs in an outburst of aggression while still under that probation. NASCAR had seen enough. In an unprecedented move, officials parked Harvick for the very next Cup Series race at Martinsville, suspending him from Sunday's Virginia 500, even though his offense occurred in a lower series. It was the first time a driver was benched for an act in a different series. Team owner Richard Childress protested that punishments should stay in their series, but NASCAR stood firm, signaling that a driver's behavior anywhere under the NASCAR banner could carry over. Harvick was also fined $35,000 and had his probation extended. This incident effectively established a new policy. Probation and suspensions are NASCAR-wide, not series-specific. The one behavior standard was born. Drivers realized that tearing up a truck or Xfinity race could now cost them dearly on Sundays. Harvick grudgingly learned his lesson and toned it down for a while. The suspension sent shockwaves. Even veteran Rusty Wallace remarked it showed NASCAR was in charge. Today, it's accepted that if you're parked for rough driving, you'll be sitting out across all series. Thanks to Happy Harvick's very unhappy weekend in 2002. Rule enacted. Disciplinary probation and suspensions apply across all NASCAR National Series, ending the separation of penalties. Jeff Burton, Pit Road Loophole and the All-Star Stop, 2002. Clever crew chief Frankie Stoddard and driver Jeff Burton engineered one of the craftiest trick plays in NASCAR All-Star history. One so clever, it prompted a rules change. In the 2002 Winston All-Star race, the first segment required all cars to make a 4-tire pit stop at some point. Burton's team realized their pit stall at Charlotte was located just before the start or finish line. Stoddard's genius idea was to stay on track until the final lap of the 40-lap segment, then dive to pit road for the required stop, take 4 tires super quick, and cross the finish line at pit exit to finish the segment without losing the lead lap. It worked brilliantly. Burton pitted as the white flag waved, sprinted 50 yards out of the pits, and was scored second for the segment, easily advancing. Broadcasters were stunned. This is either crazy or brilliant. NASCAR brass, impressed but wary, later tweaked the rules. Starting not long after, they closed pit road with 2 laps to go in any segment, and eventually in regular stages too, to prevent copycats. They also often specify when mandatory stops must occur, for example, between certain laps, to eliminate such timing loopholes. Burton's high IQ play thus lives in lore and the rulebook thanks to a new clause shutting the window he exploited. As commentator Darrell Waltrip quipped after regaining his composure, "I've never seen that before. And thanks to the rule change, we likely never will again." Rule enacted. Pit road closed in final laps of segments and stages to prevent last lap pit stop loopholes. Carl Edwards, Catch Fence Carnage and the Return of Spoilers, 2009. Carl Edwards is known for his backflip celebrations, but in 2009, He was involved in a much more dangerous airborne flip that led to a rules change. On the final lap of the April Talladega race, Edwards' Ford was bumped by Brad Keselowski and turned sideways at nearly 190 miles per hour. The car lifted off, spinning into the catch fence at the finish line, miraculously not entering the grandstand, but spraying debris and injuring several fans. Edwards climbed out unhurt and jogged across the line on foot, but the incident underscored an issue. The then-new Car of Tomorrow used a wing on the rear deck instead of a spoiler, and many believed the wing contributed to liftoff. In direct response, NASCAR announced that the wing would be scrapped. By early 2010, cars were refitted with a traditional flat-blade rear spoiler instead of the twin-post wing. The change was aimed at altering aerodynamic flow to keep cars more grounded, and, as a bonus, appease fans who hated the wing's look. Additionally, NASCAR refined the roof flap design and beefed up fences. Edwards openly supported the changes. He had famously said after the crash, "We'll race hard, but no one wants to see this again." His frightening flight made NASCAR hit the reset button on aero packages. The spoiler's return was a direct result of Carl's wild ride, proving sometimes you have to grow wings and then lose them to learn to stay on the ground. Rule enacted, Car of Tomorrow rear wing replaced with traditional spoiler to reduce liftoff risk. Stronger fences and refined roof flaps implemented. Ryan Newman, the Newman Bar for added protection, 2009 to 2013. Ryan Newman's knack for being in others' airborne crashes led to a safety innovation literally named after him. In 2009 at Talladega, Newman was involved in a harrowing last-lap wreck where another car, driven by Carl Edwards, flew into the catch fence and Newman's windshield. Later, in the 2010s, Newman had a series of incidents where cars landed on top of his number 39 and number 31, notably a 2013 crash where Kurt Busch's car came down on Newman's roof. Outspoken about safety, Newman lobbied NASCAR to strengthen the roll cage's frontal section around the driver. NASCAR's response was the so-called Newman Bar, an added roof bar reinforcement stretching across the windshield top to bolster the cage in case of exactly those scenarios. By 2013, NASCAR quietly updated the roll cage design to include this bar, two full tubes forming a horizontal brace in all Cup cars. Its presence proved vital in 2020 when Newman survived a horrific Daytona 500 crash where his car went airborne and was struck on the driver's side by another at full speed. Precisely the kind of impact the Newman Bar was meant to mitigate. Safety officials and fellow drivers credited Newman's past campaigning for quite literally saving his life in that crash. It's not often a driver lives to benefit from the rule change named after him, but Ryan Newman did. His string of bad luck incidents prompted a quiet but crucial mid-generation car update that significantly improved driver survival in freak accidents. Rule enacted, addition of the Newman Bar, extra roll cage tube across windshield, to enhance cockpit protection from roof or crush impacts. Clint Bowyer, Spingate, and Team Orders Policing, 2013. In the final race before the 2013 playoffs at Richmond, Clint Bowyer and his Michael Waltrip racing team set off a firestorm by trying to manipulate the race outcome. With 7 laps to go, Bowyer, already locked into the chase, spun his car on purpose after a coded radio call. "Is your arm itchy?" Apparently to bring out a caution and prevent rival Ryan Newman from winning and taking MWR teammate Martin Truex Jr.'s playoff spot. Concurrently, a second MWR car, Brian Vickers, was called to pit for no reason, further aiding the scheme. NASCAR officials smelled the wrongdoing immediately. The result was Spingate, one of the sport's biggest scandals. NASCAR hammered MWR with record fines and penalties, booted Truex out of the chase, and even added Jeff Gordon as an extra 13th chase entrant to right the wrong. More enduring was NASCAR's declaration that team orders or intentional cautions would not be tolerated. They amended the rulebook to explicitly ban actions detrimental to stock car racing, covering attempts to artificially alter race outcomes. From then on, radio communications are monitored for collusion, and severe penalties await anyone trying a Bowyer-style stunt. As NASCAR President Mike Helton said, it was a defining moment that drew a clear line. Indeed, in the years since, instances of teammates helping one another beyond normal racing, or drivers intentionally spinning, have been met with swift punishment. Bowyer's spin led NASCAR to effectively shout, "No more," restoring faith that every driver gives 100% effort, and every caution, we hope, is legitimate. Rule enacted, strengthened, 100% rule, prohibiting intentional spins or team orders to manipulate race results with enhanced monitoring and penalties. Tony Stewart, On-track incidents, forced driver behavior rules, 2014 and 2016. Three-time champion Tony Stewart found himself at the center of two rule changes late in his career, one tragic, one oddly bureaucratic. First, in August 2014, Stewart, racing a sprint car on an off night, struck and killed another driver, Kevin Ward Jr., who had climbed out on track to confront him under caution. Though not in NASCAR, the incident had a ripple effect. Within days, NASCAR implemented a new rule barring drivers from exiting their cars after crashes until safety officials arrive, unless there's fire or immediate danger. This codified what was once common sense. No more angry striding onto a hot track allowed. Then, in 2016, smoke inadvertently prompted another rule. Recovering from injury, Stewart spoke out about NASCAR no longer enforcing teams to tighten all 5 lug nuts on wheels. He warned it was a safety issue if teams shorted lugs for faster stops. NASCAR fined Stewart $35,000 for criticizing officiating, but the outcry was loud. Merely a week later, NASCAR did a 180. It issued a rule that all lug nuts must be secured and began policing them again. Fans dubbed it the Tony Stewart rule, as his fine essentially bought a safety change. Stewart's swan song season thus saw NASCAR both mandate driver patience, stay in your darn car, and wheel security, no more 3-lug pit stops. Ever the agitator, Tony managed to leave his mark not just in trophies, but in the rulebook clauses that reign in driver fury and ensure 4 wheels stay on. Rules enacted. Drivers must remain in cars during on-track incidents. Mandatory tightening of all lug nuts on wheels, reversing a lax policy. Kurt Busch, Personal Conduct, Policy and Suspension, 2015. Former champion Kurt Busch's volatile behavior off the track led NASCAR to assert a new zero-tolerance stance on conduct. In late 2014, Busch was accused of domestic assault by his ex-girlfriend, a legal case dubbed the Sheriff Star incident. Although the case was still under investigation with no charges yet, in February 2015, a family court issued a restraining order citing possibility of abuse. NASCAR took the unprecedented step of suspending Busch indefinitely just days before the Daytona 500, citing actions detrimental to stock car racing, effectively a personal conduct policy in action. This was the first time a driver was benched for an off-track domestic issue. It signaled that NASCAR's code of conduct extends beyond the cockpit. The suspension was lifted after about a month when authorities declined to press charges, but the message was sent. NASCAR would act swiftly in matters of violence or moral turpitude, even absent a criminal conviction. This situation led NASCAR to formalize its rulebook language around behavioral expectations for its members, similar to stick-and-ball leagues. Indeed, later in 2015, NASCAR introduced its behavioral penalty section more clearly. Busch's case, coming on the heels of NFL's domestic violence spotlight, pushed NASCAR to demonstrate that its participants are accountable for personal actions. The rule going forward is clear. If you're under credible accusation of serious misconduct, you may find yourself parked. Busch's own brother Kyle noted that NASCAR did what it had to do. Rule enforced, NASCAR's off-track personal conduct policy, including suspension for domestic violence allegations, even without legal resolution. Kyle Busch, the Kyle Busch Rules for Age and Dominance, 2001 and 2017. Kyle Busch's extraordinary career forced not one but 2 rule changes bearing his name. First came his precocious rise. In 2001, 16-year-old Busch ran several Truck Series races, impressing everyone. But at Fontana that fall, a tobacco-sponsored race on the same weekend, in another series, barred minors on track. Kyle was pulled from the event. NASCAR leadership then reconsidered its age policy. Just weeks later, it instituted a strict minimum age of 18 for all top national series, Cup Busch Truck, effective January 2002. The change, unofficially dubbed the Kyle Busch Rule, sidelined young Busch for 2 years until he turned 18. Fast forward to the 2010s. Now a Cup champion, Kyle was dominating NASCAR's Junior Series, racking up wins in Xfinity and trucks to the point of fan backlash. In 2017, NASCAR finally moved to limit Cup veterans' participation. They ruled that elite drivers with 5+ years Cup experience could run only a handful of Xfinity and truck races per year, originally 10 Xfinity and 7 truck, and none in those series playoffs. Again, this was nicknamed the Kyle Busch Rule, as Busch's habit of torching the Xfinity field prompted it. Kyle himself joked, "This is Kyle Busch 2.0. They want to eliminate the strongest force, us." Love him or not, Busch's impact is undeniable. He was so young he raised the entry age, and so good he got booted, mostly, out of the minors. Rules enacted, Minimum driver age of 18 for National Series, limits on Cup veterans in Xfinity and Truck, 10 and now 5 races max. AKA the Kyle Busch 2.0 rule. Brad Keselowski, tweeting from the car band, 2012. During the 2012 Daytona 500, Brad Keselowski did something no one had seen before. Under a red flag delay, after Juan Montoya's jet dryer explosion, Keselowski pulled out his smartphone and began live tweeting from his car on the track. He snapped a famous photo of the fiery jet fuel cleanup and answered fan questions on Twitter in real time. The social media world went crazy. Brad gained over 100,000 followers that night, and NASCAR initially basked in the cool publicity, noting he broke no rules at that time. But a few races later, in a caution at Phoenix, Keselowski tweeted again from his car. By then, NASCAR had quietly informed teams that phones or electronic devices were not allowed in cars during competition. Brad claimed ignorance, but NASCAR dropped the hammer with a $25,000 fine for violating the newly clarified rule. The confused fan response, "He was a hero at Daytona, now a villain at Phoenix," led NASCAR to publicly explain that after the Daytona stunt, they explicitly told drivers no more in-car tweeting or phones. Essentially, Keselowski's innovation forced NASCAR to firm up an old rule: cars can't carry non-approved electronics, and add a modern twist: smartphones count. Nowadays, drivers still engage fans on social media, but only from the garage or victory lane, never from inside a hot race car. Brad's Daytona tweeting remains legendary, but you won't see it again. As one official put it, "We encourage social media, just not during the race." Rule enacted: no electronic devices, smartphones, etc. may be carried on board by drivers, enforced after the 2012 Daytona incident. Ross Chastain, wall ride maneuver outlawed, 2022. In the penultimate race of 2022, up-and-coming driver Ross Chastain pulled off a video game-style move that instantly went viral and immediately got banned. Needing 2 spots on the final lap at Martinsville to make the championship 4, Chastain floored his Chevy against the outside wall through turns 3 and 4, deliberately riding the wall at full throttle. The insane slingshot saw him pass 5 cars in one corner and advance by a nose in a Hail Mary that fans dubbed the Hail Melon, a nod to Chastain's watermelon farmer roots. While spectacular, the move raised safety concerns. It worked only because others lifted. In the off-season, NASCAR leadership acknowledged the ingenuity but said wall riding will not be tolerated going forward. They cited an existing rule about unsafe driving and promised to issue time penalties for any future attempts. Chastain himself good-naturedly said, "I'm proud I have a rule named after me." Indeed, in the 2023 rulebook, NASCAR made clear that flinging your car at the wall to gain spots is considered an unfair advantage under Rule 10.5, actions detrimental. Thus, one of the most astonishing last-lap moves in NASCAR history was effectively a one-and-done. Ross's heroics forced NASCAR to close a loophole nobody even knew existed, ensuring realism stays in racing and that wild rides belong in video games, not Cup Series finales. Rule enacted: explicit enforcement that wall riding or intentional collision to gain time is illegal, with new penalties to prevent Chastaining the track. Special mention: Dale Earnhardt. The Intimidator's death spurs a safety revolution. 2001. The sport lost its hero on February 18, 2001, when Dale Earnhardt perished in a last-lap crash at Daytona. Earnhardt's fatal accident, a seemingly moderate impact into the wall, shook NASCAR to its core and immediately ended an era of resistance to safety gadgets. The 7-time champion had famously eschewed some new safety devices, including the hand's head and neck restraint, and was vocal that drivers knew the risks. After his death from a basilar skull fracture, NASCAR's reaction was sweeping. Within months, the hands device, or similar neck restraints, was strongly recommended, and following Blaise Alexander's fatal crash later that same year, NASCAR made them mandatory across all national series. Open-face helmets fell out of favor as full-face models were encouraged. NASCAR also sped up installation of safer soft wall barriers at tracks to absorb impact energy. These were rolled out widely by 2002 to 2003. Additionally, Earnhardt's death directly led to rules requiring drivers to wear closed-face helmets and 6-point harness seatbelts, as well as improved seats. Perhaps most visibly, it prompted NASCAR to develop the car of tomorrow with greater crash protection. The Intimidator's passing marked a paradigm shift. No longer would safety innovations be optional or lagging. Every driver since has essentially raced in Dale's legacy of safety, a bittersweet gift from the man who gave so much to the sport. As driver Kyle Petty put it, Earnhardt's death saved lives. Rules enacted: mandatory hands devices, safer barriers, improved belts and helmets, a comprehensive safety overhaul post-2001. Which of these drivers do you think got hit with the most unfair rule change? Drop your pick in the comments. I'm curious where fans stand. Thank you for watching the NASCAR Explainer.